Welcome to Scott's Speaking Sports City, ladies and gentlemen. I am back with my dad today, and we are ready for another great weekend of NFL and college football action. Great game last night on Thursday Night Football. I will happily take a 20-14 win on the road at Carolina.
Yes, sir.
Vernon Hargreaves, thank you for making that great tackle on Christian McCaffrey last night. And I've already made my I'm already ready for the ballots to come out next year for the presidency, because I'm voting for Todd Bowles for president next year. He will be going to the White House next year because he's making a very bad-looking defense last year into a great-looking one this year. Let's get into the picks right now. First game out tonight, 9:15, a weird time to kick off tonight. It will be Washington State and Houston. I'm going to go with Washington State to get another win on the road here at Houston. I just trust their defense a little bit more here. I will take Washington State on the road on a Friday night against Houston.
I agree. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. Should be a pretty entertaining affair. I'm going to go with Washington State as well. I think they're a more quality football team.
Now into the noon games, as it will be Arkansas State heading in to Athens to take on the Georgia Bulldogs.
What a tough game for Georgia.
It's as long as they don't look ahead to next week, they got a really tough game next week. I can say a pretty good Notre Dame team next week. I will take Georgia at home to get a win over the Red Wolves of Arkansas State.
I'm going to take Georgia as well, and I think they will cover the 33-point spread.
Next up, Ohio State and Indiana should be a good game tonight. Tomorrow at noon on Fox. It's going to be closer than people think. Ohio State favored by 17.5. I am going to take Ohio State on the road at Indiana. Should be no problems here. They did give Michigan some tough times the last couple of years. So I'm going to take Ohio State on the road in Bloomington to find a way to get a win against Indiana.
Historically, Indiana's played Ohio State and Michigan tough, but I agree with Scott. I think Ohio State's going to get the win, and I also agree with Scott that Indiana's probably going to be a good betting option with the 17.5 points.
Next up, the Pitt Panthers, who have UCF coming in next week to Heinz Field next week, as they take on number 13 ranked Penn State at Beaver Stadium at University Park. I'll take James Franklin and Penn State to get a win, and hopefully weaken Pitt up a little bit, soften them up a little bit for us next week. So I don't think UCF's going to be ready for that nice weather up there in Pitt next week. I'm going to take Penn State at home to get a win over Pitt.
I agree. Penn State's a better team. They're playing at home. Give the win to Penn State.
Next up, number 21 Maryland, coming off 2 60-point weeks. They put up 120 points in their first 2 games of the season. Absolutely incredible. As they head in to Lincoln Financial Field and Philadelphia to take on the Temple Owls. I'm going to take Maryland. I'm one of the only people who have believed in Maryland this season. I'm going to take the Terps to get a win over Temple this week. Give me the Terps on the road to get a win over Temple.
I'm a believer in Maryland, just a week too late. I think Maryland's going to win against Temple, and they're going to win big.
Next up, New Mexico and Notre Dame on the Notre Dame Broadcasting Network, NBC. Should be no problems here. I will take Notre Dame at home to get a win. Going into next week against Georgia, I will take Notre Dame at home against New Mexico State.
I agree. Easy pick here, the Irish.
Next up, the first CBS game of the season, as we will get the SEC games going this week, as it will be Alabama, the number 2 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide heading into Columbia to take on South Carolina. I will take Alabama on the road in a blowout this week. Alabama blows out South Carolina this week. Tough game to watch on ABC this week. I'm going to take Alabama on the road at South Carolina.
I would have expected a better game before I saw the South Carolina-North Carolina outcome, but now I think Alabama's going to roll South Carolina. I agree with Scott.
Next up, number 24 USC heading in to Provo, Utah to take on BYU. That backup quarterback looked good for USC last week. I think he'll look at it again this week. Give me the Trojans on the road to get a win over BYU.
I agree. I think USC's got too much talent. I do think that BYU's going to give them a better game than people think, but I do believe that USC will come away with the victory.
Next up, Arizona State and Michigan State. A battle of last year. I believe they played in week 3 last year in Tempe. So it's going to be in East Lansing this year. And I'm going to take Mark D'Antonio and Michigan State to get revenge after losing last year on the last-second field goal. I will take Michigan State at home to get revenge against Herm Edwards and get a win over Arizona State.
I do like Herm Edwards. I think he's a really good coach, but I agree with Scott. I think Michigan State's going to get the win here.
Next up, Idaho State heading into Provo, Utah Salt Lake City, Utah head to take on the number 11 ranked Utah Utes. My preseason pick to win the Pac-12, so it's looking pretty good for me right now. I'm going to take Utah to get a win over Idaho State. Should be no problems here. I'll take Utah to get a win over Idaho State.
I didn't even know there was an Idaho State. I knew about Idaho, so that doesn't bode well for Idaho State. I like Utah on this one big.
Next up, the Kent State Golden Flashes heading into Auburn, Alabama to take on Bo Nixon and Auburn. They got a big game coming up in a few weeks down here in the Swamp. It should be a great game that week. But I'm going to take Auburn at home to get a win over Kent State this week. Should be no problem. I'll take Auburn at home to get a win over Kent State.
What is a Golden Flash?
No idea.
Strange mascot. Don't even know what it is. I think Auburn's going to roll.
Next up, Texas A&M and Lamar. Should be no problems here. Texas A&M's got
Lamar, they're playing a person?
Got a tough game next week against, I believe they play Auburn next week. So I'm going to take Texas A&M to get ready for Auburn and blow out Lamar on Saturday. Tell Lamar to play much better than he did last week. I'll take Texas A&M at home in College Station against Lamar.
Well, it sounds like it's an unfair matchup. Lamar sounds like he's got one player, and Texas A&M's an entire team, so I think Texas A&M's going to roll big.
Next up, number 1, Clemson heading in to the Carrier Dome and Syracuse to take on Dino Babers and Syracuse. I am going to go with Clemson to win this game big. This game might be over at halftime. I'll take Clemson to blow out Syracuse. This should be no problems here. Dabo Swinney learned his lesson from a few years ago when they lost to Syracuse. I was actually on an airplane watching that game on the way to see my sister up in Virginia at that point. So I'm going to take Clemson on the road to get a win against Syracuse.
Syracuse usually plays pretty well at home, but Clemson just has too much talent. Clemson gets a win.
Next up, Northwestern State heading in to Baton Rouge, Louisiana to take on the Cookie Monster and LSU, coming in at number 4 ranked in the nation. I will take LSU on the road at home to get a win against Northwestern State. Should be no problem here. I'll take LSU at home against Northwestern State.
I agree. LSU rolls.
Next up, Hawaii and Washington. Washington absolutely getting upset last week against Cal. I'm going to take Jacob Eason and Washington to bounce back after a tough loss last week. I'll take Washington at home to get a win over Cole McDonald and Hawaii.
I agree. The Rainbows are going down. The Huskies are winning this game. Washington wins.
Next up, Florida State, after barely pulling off a minor upset last week, after upsetting Louisiana Monroe last week, barely, as they head into Charlottesville, Virginia, to take on the number 25 ranked Virginia Cavaliers. I'm going to take UVA at home. Their defense is looking great. Not a lot of good offense from Virginia, but when you have a great defense like Virginia does, you don't need a lot of offense. I'm going to take Virginia at home to win this game by 14 points this week.
Florida State's really bad. They almost lost to a really, really bad team last week. I think Virginia's going to win by at least 10 points.
Next up, number 5, Oklahoma heading in to Pasadena to take on Chip Kelly and UCLA, who are 0-2 again this year. Another tough year for Chip Kelly. I'm going to take Oklahoma on the road to get a big win over UCLA.
I agree. I think Chip Kelly, this experiment has not worked. He has not turned this program around. Oklahoma has too much firepower. Oklahoma gets a win here.
Next up, number 12, Texas heading in to Houston, Texas at NRG Stadium to take on the Rice Owls. I will take Sam Ehlinger and Texas to bounce back. After a heartbreaker last week against LSU, I will take Texas to bounce back and get a win on the road. I don't think they'll cover the 32.5, but I do think they'll get the win. I'll take Texas on the road to get a win over Rice.
Texas showed a lot of moxie last week playing LSU. They missed some scoring opportunities early, but Texas is the real deal. Texas is going to get the win.
Next up, number 22, Boise State. Once again on the Smurf turf this week, Albertson Stadium, as they take on Portland State. They did not impress me last week, but I'm going to take Boise State to look a little better this week. I'll take Boise State at home in Albertson Stadium to get a win against Portland State.
I didn't even know Portland State was a school or they had a football program, so I'm going Boise State here.
Next up, Oregon and Montana. Should be no problems here. I'll take Justin Herbert and the Ducks to get a win over the Montana Grizzlies this week.
Since Montana has a state of roughly 500 people, they don't have a lot of population to draw from. I think Oregon's going to win this big.
And next up, it will be UCF and Stanford from the sold-out Spectrum Stadium tomorrow. Nice! Make sure to bring your ponchos tomorrow, Night Nation. There could be a lot of rain tomorrow, but that's not going to slow down this offense. Stanford's defense looks absolutely horrible last week against
USC.
USC, and USC was on their backup quarterback. Josh Heupel could use any one of our 3 quarterbacks this week, and we're winning this game. UCF up by 2 touchdowns to win this one against Stanford.
Woo!
I agree UCF's going to win. Scott almost said that in a mocking fashion, which gives me some concern. I think Stanford is definitely the underdog in this game. I think UCF will win by somewhere between 7 and 10 points.
Next up, Florida and Kentucky.
Boo.
Lexington, Kentucky, Kroger Field. Touchdown, Terry Wilson out for the year for Kentucky towards ACL last week. I'm going to take Felipe Franks at Florida to stay alive.
Boo.
And they get a win on the road at Kentucky. I think we're playing an FCS team by the name of Tennessee next week. I'll take Florida over Kentucky.
Yeah, Kentucky has too many injuries. They're not the same team they were last year. Plus, we've got revenge on our mind after they snapped our 31-game winning streak. Florida gets this win by at least 10.
Next up, College Game Day. We'll be there tomorrow morning, bright and early. 80 degrees tomorrow, slated for the 4 o'clock kickoff on Fox. As it'll be number 19 Iowa heading into Ames, Iowa to take on Iowa State. I'm going to go with Nate Stanley and Iowa to get a win on the road at Ames. If you ask an Oklahoma fan, it's impossible to win at Ames. But this is an afternoon game, not a night game. I will take Nate Stanley and Iowa to go into Ames, Iowa, and pull off the upset. Give me Iowa on the road at Iowa State.
I apologize to my 2 cousins that are from Iowa, that are Iowa fans. I'm going to go with the Cyclones. I think Iowa State at home is a really tough team to beat. I think game day being there is going to get them extra juiced, and they are going to beat the Iowa Hawkeyes by a field goal.
Next up, now into the NFL games. First game up, Jimmy G and the Niners heading into Cincinnati, Ohio to take on Andy Dalton and the Bengals. I almost got eliminated in the eliminator last week by taking Seattle over Cincinnati. Seattle wins by 1 point last week, thank God. I'm going to take San Francisco at home. On the road in Cincinnati, Jimmy G will look better this week. Now he's not playing against one of the best defenses in the NFL. I'll take Jimmy G and the Niners to get a win in Cincinnati against the Bengals.
I actually am going to pick the upset here. I'm going to pick the Bengals over the 49ers. I think the Bengals showed a lot when they played at Seattle, taking Seattle to a 1-point game. I'm going to take the Bengals at home with San Francisco traveling twice in 2 weeks.
Next up, Phillip Rivers and the Chargers heading into Ford Field in Detroit Rock City to take on Matt Patricia and the Lions coming off a tie last week against the Arizona Cardinals. I will take Phillip Rivers and the Chargers to get a win here on the road against Matt Patricia and the Lions.
I agree. I think the Chargers are a far superior team, even though they're going on the road. I think the Chargers will get the win with the experience of Phillip Rivers.
Next up, the Case Keenum, the Minnesota Vikings heading in to Green Bay and Lambeau to take on Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Hopefully, the Packers can actually put up some offense this week. They looked absolutely horrific last week on offense against the Bears. I'll take the Packers at home to get a win against the Vikings.
I think the Vikings are the real deal. I think the Vikings are going to win at Green Bay and win by at least a touchdown.
Next up, Jacoby Brissett and the Indianapolis Colts, who actually looked pretty good last week, losing in overtime against the Chargers last week, as they head into Nashville, Tennessee, and Nissan Stadium to take on the Tennessee Titans, who absolutely obliterated the Cleveland Browns last week. I will take the Tennessee Titans at home to get a win against the Indianapolis Colts this week.
Of all the games last week, I think the Titans score was the biggest surprise. I think the Titans are a pretty good team this year. I'm going to take the Titans to win this game.
Next up, the New England Patriots, led by Tom Brady, and who absolutely looked phenomenal last week against the Steelers, as they head into Hard Rock Stadium in Miami to take on
Yay, Fitzy!
either Josh Rosen or Ryan Fitzpatrick. Whichever one they decide to start this week won't matter. I'm going to take the Patriots to win and cover the 18.5. I will take the Patriots on the road easily. The Dolphins are looking to trade all their best players. I will take the Patriots to get a win against the Dolphins.
The Patriots historically have had problems with the Dolphins, but this is not the year. The Dolphins have a pretty darn bad team, maybe the worst team in the NFL. This would be a good game to pick in your Eliminator League. I got the Patriots winning on the road against the Dolphins.
And I actually did pick the Patriots this week in the Eliminator, so there you go.
Smart.
Next up, the Buffalo Bills don't have to go that far. They played the Jets last week. They stay in the exact same spot as they take on Eli Manning and the Giants, coming off a bad loss last week against the Cowboys. I'll take Josh Allen and the Bills to send the Giants to 0-2. Trust me, they'll be 0-3 next week when they come in down here to Tampa. I'll take Josh Allen and the Bills to get a road win on the road against Eli and the Giants.
I don't think the Bills or Giants, either of them are particularly good, but I think the Bills are a little better. I think they get the win on the road against the Giants.
Next up, the Seattle Seahawks heading into Heinz Field to take on Big Ben and the Steelers. Just because it's at home, and I don't want to get heat from Terry Jewell like I got last week, I will take the Steelers at home to get a win against a pretty bad secondary out there in Seattle, who looked pretty bad last week against John Ross and the Bengals. I will take the Steelers at home to get a win against the Seahawks.
I agree. I think the Steelers playing at home, they were really embarrassed by the Patriots. They're going to want to bounce back. And Seattle is a different team away. I think Seattle's not the same Seattle team we had 2-3 years ago. I think Pittsburgh wins this and wins it fairly convincingly.
Next up, the Dallas Cowboys heading into Landover, Maryland to take on the Washington Redskins. Darius Guy's out for 6 to 8 weeks with another injury. He hurt his left knee last year. It's his right one this year. Cannot stay healthy. I'm going to take the Dallas Cowboys on the road to get a win in Landover, Maryland against the Redskins.
Redskins gave the Eagles a good game last week. I think the Redskins are better than people thought, but I do think Dallas is probably going to get the win. But I think it's going to be really close.
Next up, the Arizona Cardinals heading in to Baltimore to take on the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson will not have 5 touchdowns this week. He scored 5 last week against the Dolphins. He will not go for that this week. I'll take the Ravens at home to get a win against Kyler Murray and the Cardinals.
I agree. I think the Ravens are just too good for the Cardinals. The Cardinals had a lucky opponent in Detroit for the first week. I think the Cardinals get blasted in Baltimore.
Next up, Gardner Minshew and the Jacksonville Jaguars heading into Houston and NRG Stadium to take on Deshaun Watson and the Texans. I think the Texans are going to be upset after how they lost last week to the Saints. That was an incredible game last week. I saw the end of it. Great game. I'll take Deshaun Watson and the Texans to get a win at home against Gardner Minshew and the Jags.
I think arguably in the AFC, other than the Patriots, the Texans may be the best team in the AFC. I think the Texans get this win fairly easily.
Next up, the Kansas City Chiefs heading in to Oakland to take on Derek Carr and the Oakland Raiders, who are also 1-0 after beating the Broncos last Monday night. Nobody watched it because it was on at like 10:15. So I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs on the road. No sign of Tyreek Hill this week. Doesn't matter. I think Sammy Watkins will come in and play well. Put up 40-something points last week in fantasy for me. I'm not starting him this week, though. I might start him. I don't know. We'll see. I'll take the Chiefs on the road to get a win against the Raiders.
I think Watkins may be the best fantasy play the rest of the year with the Hill down and their passing offense.
He'll be back in a few weeks, though.
But I would take the Chiefs over the Raiders. I think they're going to beat them pretty easy. I think the Raiders got lucky playing a really weak Denver team in week 1.
Next up, the Chicago Bears heading into Denver to take on the Broncos. I'm going to go Mitchell Trubisky and the Chicago Bears to bounce back after an embarrassing loss last week to the Packers. I'll take the Bears on the road to get a win in Denver at Mile High against Joe Flacco against the Broncos.
I agree. I think the Bears are they're going to play angry. They look really bad on Thursday night in the opener. I think they're going to go on the road against Denver and get the win.
Next up, Drew Brees and the Saints coming off a huge win last week against the Texans as they head to the other side of the coast as they take on Jared Goff and the Rams. A rematch of last year's NFC Championship game. I'm going to take the Rams at home to get a win against the Saints, and that puts the Bucs in first place in the NFC South for a week. I'll take the Rams at home against the Saints.
I think the Saints are going to go in there angry from last year. I think they've got something to prove. I think they're going to go on the road and surprise people and beat the Rams.
Next up, the Philadelphia Eagles heading in to Atlanta and Mercedes-Benz Superdome to take on the Atlanta Falcons, who did not look good last week. They scored 2 garbage time touchdowns against the Vikings. Well, what do you expect when you have Dirk Cutter as your offensive coordinator who can't do anything? Couldn't do anything here in Tampa, but now he's over there in Atlanta not doing much. I'll take Carson Wentz and the Eagles to get a win on the road against Atlanta on Sunday night.
I agree. Carson Wentz looked great week 1. I think the Eagles are going to win this one pretty handily.
Next up, Baker Mayfield and the Browns heading in to New York to take on the Sam Darnold-less Jets. Could be out for a few weeks. I'm going to take Baker Mayfield to bounce back. He had an awful week last week against the Titans. He'll bounce back in prime time this week on Monday night. I'll take the Browns on the road. Without Sam Darnold this week, I think the Jets are going to struggle. They're going to rely too much on Le'Veon Bell this week. I'll take the Browns on the road to get a win against Le'Veon and the Jets.
I agree. I think without the starting quarterback, the Jets are going to struggle. The Jets are not very good to begin with. The Browns are going to play with a chip on their shoulder after last week, and I think the Browns get the win.
And that will do it for this episode of Scott Speaking Sports Today, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be back next week with another video. I'll post my WWE Clash of Champions predictions in the comment section down below of this video, so check those out if you want to. Always like, subscribe, comment, and share. And I'll see you guys right back here next week on Scott Speaking Sports right here on YouTube. See you later, guys.
See you guys.
Go Knights!